Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the most interesting storylines going into the second half of the 2020-2021 season for the Toronto Raptors. There's a lot of things to unravel here. After starting 2-8 on the season, the Raptors are back on track before the first half of the season, just sitting outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture. And as you know, the Eastern Conference playoff picture is still completely open. A top 4 seed is still there for the Toronto Raptors to strive for. And despite having some issues this season with chemistry, with bringing in new guys, and now with health and safety protocols throwing them off the last couple games, there's still 36 games left this season for them to come back and put on a show for the Raptor fans and really just get themselves back on track. So let's talk about the first most important thing and probably the key storyline to look out for this year, which is the play of Norman Powell. And Powell has been a huge player for the Toronto Raptors this season. As a starter, he's shooting 50, 40, 90 on over 20 points per game. And on the season, he's averaging 18.4 points per game and is shooting over 43% from three-point range. And as a starter, he's been an incredible player, averaging 22 points per game, almost 4 rebounds, 2 assists. And like I said, he's shooting 53%, 46%, and then 92% in 23 starts this season. He's been absolutely on fire. The Raptors really have to see what they can do with him because, as we know, he's got a player option going into the 2021-22 season for $11.6 million. But let's be real, he's declining that. He's going to become a free agent. He's going to be a hot commodity. So that kind of leads directly into my second most important storyline going into this season for the second half specifically, which is what does Toronto do at the trade deadline? Because let's start with Norman Powell. There's still a lot of things they can do with a guy of his value. He's obviously at a peak value in his career. He's proven he can be a very quality starter in the NBA. He can average 20 a game for part of the season at least. We'll see what he does the rest of the season. We'll see what Toronto decides to do with him as they hit the trade deadline. But if he's put into a bigger role as a top 3 option, potentially on a young team, let's say like the Sacramento Kings, let's say you get Bagley back in return for a guy like Powell, maybe some other assets back in return, Toronto can fill their front court, and a team like Sacramento can take Norman Powell, put him into a bigger role next to Harrison Barnes, next to obviously their backcourt, and Tyrese Halliburton off the bench. Powell can be an integral part of that team, and he could easily average 20 a game for that squad as a 27-year-old reaching the peak of his career. But as a Raptors fan, you want him to stay, but like I said, he might be a guy that gets overpaid. So at the trade deadline, I'm interested to see if Masai Ujiri decides to do anything with him or if they hold on to him. And there's another player, obviously, that's looming. We just saw Michael Grain say that Kyle Lowry's not getting traded at the deadline. That doesn't mean anything, right? Michael Grange is not that connected. He's not that plugged in. He's not Masai Ujiri coming out and saying that. So we've got to hold that with a grain of salt and remember that at the end of the day, anything can happen, and there's still 2 weeks from now until the deadline, which is at the 25th. So 2 weeks is a long time for things to change, for the team to unravel, and for Lowry to ask for a trade. So this is another interesting thing where the March 25th trade deadline comes into play, and the Kyle Lowry conundrum is the biggest one there. Obviously, like I said, the Raptors could be a buyer, they could be a seller. We don't really know what they're going to do. I think their play over the next couple weeks is going to be a big factor in what they do, because if they were to, say, lose their next 4 or 5 games, then Masai Ujiri is going to be a lot more open to making a trade at the deadline, getting rid of Lowry, and moving assets to start to retool than they would be if they were to go on like a 5 or 6 game winning streak and say, hey, we're a piece away, which, you know, they potentially could be, but I don't know. As a Raptors fan, I'm not really sure what I want. Part of me wants Lowry to retire with Toronto. Part of me wants the assets. But I think the time in between you'll get Kyle Lowry is really worth it to me. And that's why this is how Toronto can really look to improve their front court, add a center that they really need to add onto their squad. Another thing that's going to be a really big play out for me is how the small ball lineup develops. And for me, I don't know. I think that the best lineup the Raptors can have out there is obviously Norman Powell starting and finishing games, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, Siakam, and then OG Anunoby as well, with Siakam slotted in at the 5 as their tallest player. I think it's an interesting lineup. When you get to the playoffs and you have to play a team like Philadelphia, this lineup's going to really struggle. When you play even a team like the Milwaukee Bucks, despite the Raptors winning both those games against them, the small ball lineup is going to struggle. Let's be real. It's a challenging lineup to put when you're playing teams that crash the boards and you're not getting a lot of second chance opportunities, and the other team is taking control of that part of the game. It makes it difficult to win. Oftentimes, the team that out-rebounds is the better team. So for the Raptors, they've got to figure out how they can actively run this lineup while also limiting their ability to have that disadvantage on the boards, because obviously they get an advantage when they go on the offensive side of the court and they can put a guy like Brook Lopez in the pick and roll, they can put Joel Embiid in the pick and roll and really start to take advantage of them playing 5 out like that. So I'm interested to see what they do there as well. Obviously, this has been their most effective lineup thus far this season, so for Toronto, they've really got to consider this to be their best lineup moving forward, and ideally when all healthy, this is the best lineup to roll out with. However, you do need a backup plan, and that's why I think the deadline is also a really big storyline for me, because if you can get a good big man as a backup player, as a rotation guy, I know Baines has been solid, but I think you could still get something better there. Someone more reliable to guard a guy like Joel Embiid 35 minutes a game, and that's what the Raptors really need. And then small ball can be your way you close out games, or potentially just a way to switch things up as one of your better looks, either when Embiid is off or even when he's playing, to double him regularly and rotate out to shooters. We know the Raptors do that really well. But these are the 3 things that I'm interested to see what the Raptors do over the next few weeks and throughout the rest of the season, because it's been an interesting season. The East is wide open, like I said. So Masai Ujiri's a lot of decisions to be made. Norman Powell's been balling out, so I'm interested to see how he continues to play. And then obviously, interested to see if the small ball lineup can sustain itself. Thank you guys for listening. I'll catch you on the next episode.